Hello, everyone. I am Kat, and you are tuning into Cosmic Metamorphosis today. So, thank you so much for joining me. Um, Lots of things going on. Today's December 8th. Wow. Um, as I was going through Telegram this morning, someone had posted about Brazil finally getting their EBS, or what they call it, EAS, Emergency Alert System, and for people to be prepared for, I think, 15 or 20 to 30 days worth of food. Um, so hopefully we are not far behind, because as Alex always says, like, all of this is going to synchronize. All the countries are going to synchronize, and I think that's, there's so many meanings for different words. If you follow the letter 17, there's different meanings for things, and several. So I think part of the storm is us, but the biggest storm, I think, might be this collective of military just coming into the countries and taking out everybody at the same time. Yeah, what a storm that would be. And then there was another post from a guy, Phil, if you know Phil G. I don't really follow him. I don't get a good enough vibe off of him, but he did post a video today saying that something big is going to be going down in the next, if not today, in the next hours, or at least in the next, weekend or whatever. So I guess we'll find out about that. So I hope you all are doing well. I hope you all are prepared. I'm as about prepared as I can be. Like, I think some of the food stock that I did have, like, we had to get into, because money is very tight right now, right, for a lot of us. So yeah, some of that backup is already gone, or it's been in there for years, and I had to throw away a lot because of the expiration dates. And I know there's some, like, you can still probably use after the expiration date, but anyway, yeah, I probably need to go to the store and get a few more things. Um, I did see something else that someone had posted on, uh, yeah, basically on, oh, let me see. I'm trying to find it because I just put it on my saved messages. So this was on the Knights of Terra website, and it was posted, someone posted, it says it's always been about the children, is the who it's from, but it says, what if the unfinished border wall forced the flood of illegals into specific corridors that were monitored by Space Force and other entities like the DIA? What if the illegals were tracked via quantum computers that could identify each individual from space anywhere on Earth based on their electromagnetic and frequency signatures? Basically, a marauder's map of for Earth. And if you follow my channel, I said, like, over a year ago, and I've been saying it, that we each have a specific frequency. They know us individually by our frequencies. So I found that really interesting that someone posted that as well. Yeah, we're like, fingerprints are all supposed to be unique and individual, but so is your frequency signature. So they know how to find you. And then it said, um, what if quantum-based smart dust was used on illegals as they crossed the border? What if the illegals were being used in order to identify human traffickers within the federal government and the military? What if all of them could be remote viewed from anywhere? Wow. So I was like, yeah, that's probably possible, and I bet you anything there's a reason for it. There's a reason for the chaos. When we see stuff like that and we're like, how the hell are they letting them get away with it? There's a reason. There's always a reason. And we know we've already won. Of course, we've won. So there's a reason that we are seeing these insane, ridiculous things being played out in this movie, right? Okay. I just have to laugh because I'm like, seriously? Seriously? Do you, I mean, I guess some people are still, still asleep. They don't get it. But anyway, okay, today I'm going to do Alex Collier's November 18th webinar, number 170. Um, I was working on the November 11th question and answer, and then I'm like, oh my God, like I was gonna roll it into this one, but there's so much, and I'm kind of at this point, and I hope y'all don't get mad with me, but it's like I think I'm just gonna not do the question and answer videos, unless I have time to like listen to them, and maybe they're like I said, if there's new information, I will put it out there for you guys, but I kind of want to get back into like doing some of my own videos. I want to go back to some of the books, the Curial books, or our Journey Home books, or just chapters from Little Grandmother. I want to really talk about Lemuria. There's other videos that I found I want to share with you guys. So um, yeah, so hopefully I will have time, but we'll see. Anyway, today let's get into Alex Collier's November 18th, number 170. He says, hello, everyone. I hope all of you are well. He says, well, I don't know, or I do know, that we are not going to get into 4D today. He says, because there's so many other things to cover. And so let me just he says, let me just get into what we're going to be talking about today. He says, today we're going to start with current stat. And to those of you who reside in the United States, congratulations. We are no longer a democracy. We are a constitutional republic. And that is official. And you'll be hearing about that very, very soon. As you are well aware, there's a lot of military movement going on. He says, now, because the United States is a republic, we are all going to go through a lot of dramatic change because many of the organizations we currently have, government agencies and NGOs, things like that, will all be going away. This will also include Senior Executive Services, or the SES, which he's talked about before. Says they will also be going away. However, it is expected they will not be going away without kicking and screaming because they have actually been the force that has been behind the scenes. See, and I wonder if anyone gets in on the Friday questions, ask him, like I've never heard anybody talk about like we've talked about the IRS being abolished, but we haven't talked about the credit scoring. Okay. I know they're trying to do a social thing. It's not going to happen. Don't worry about it. It is not going to happen. But someone needs to ask about the credit scoring because all those companies, those three main companies, Equifax, TransUnion, and who's the other one? Experian. All those are probably owned by the bloodlines, of course. And of course, they never have a bad rap because either they have too much money and they're able to pay their bills, or they get everything for free. So, those of us hardworking people who don't have a perfect score because, God forbid, we had to buy groceries to feed our children and not pay a medical bill, all that goes on your credit. So hopefully when everything goes down, that has to fall as well. And thank God when it does. So someone ask him a question about that if you get a chance. Anyway, okay. He says, now, here in the United States, the states that joined the Union after 1871 are Colorado in 1876, North Dakota was 1889. Washington State, which is right across the river from me, in 1889. Idaho, where I am, in 1890. Wyoming, 1890. Utah, 1896. Oklahoma, 1907. And New Mexico, 1912. Arizona was 1912, and Alaska 1959. Hawaii was 1959. He says these states are going to have to reapply to become part of the Union because they joined the corporate United States, not the original republic. So as these governments are removed, the citizens of each one of these states is going to have to step up. And it isn't going to be so simple to say, okay, those of you from the corporation, and then move them into the republic. He says, I'll give you my best example of that. He says, the Senate alone, 93 senators have taken foreign campaign donations and cryptos offshore as payment. I really don't like our governor. I don't like a whole lot of our government people. Hell, I don't even like 90% of our local government because they all have money. They all have money. So they pat each other's back and it pisses me off. So, yeah, I might have to get involved at some point. I'm pushing not to, but I think I might have to. We'll see. He says, from foreign governments and foreign entities. He says, this is sedition and depending on the amount of treason. So those gentlemen and those ladies have a problem, and they're not going to be allowed to remain in office. In the House of Representatives, the number that I have already is 163 Democrats and 43 Republicans who are all looking at sedition and treason already. And that puts a prelim number. So that's just a preliminary number. It says, so for here in the United States, we're literally going to have to rebuild our constitutional government, our constitutional republic. It says now, this is a really, really big deal, and there's just no other way around it. Now, what's interesting is that some of the states, such as California and Texas, where I used to live, that I'm aware of. He says there are members in the United States. They are members of the United States by treaty, which is renewed every 20 years. I didn't know that. It's going to be interesting to see how all that plays out. At the same time, we're going to be going through a transition of the currency system. The old Federal Reserve note that is in fact collapsing, and do not be surprised if that doesn't go down between today, he says, I mean collapse from today to January 24th of 2023. He says that's the back wall, January 24th, okay? So anytime between then, the Federal Reserve note is going to totally collapse. And I find that interesting that he said that because I went into a local store here called Grocery Outlet, and there was a sign at their register, and it said, due to the higher fees on the credit cards, he says it said that, and the debits from debit cards, they said, please try to use cash. I was like, oh, isn't that interesting? And then I went to Arby's drive-through, and they had a sign that said they weren't taking credit cards. It said only debit and cash. And I found that really interesting too. This was all in the same day. So things are happening, and some people are just totally oblivious to it. He says, now the importance of that is manyfold. He says, number one is that when that collapses and the new banking system refuses to take the Federal Reserve notes from very specific people, such as drug cartels, etc., they basically lose their wealth.
because no one's going to take it. You have a lot of political campaigns, corrupt politicians who are not going to be able to launder those notes into the new US note. The United States Treasury note. He says they're not going to be able to convert their notes because we know who they are. I love it. He says, or the powers that be know who they are. And that's the other thing too. Like if you follow me, you know I was having issues with my home mortgage. And when I would call to make a payment, they would send you directly to a human being to take your payment. And because of the situation we were in, from the forbearance, and they screwed it all up and they wouldn't honor the new contract. And so I called like last week to make a payment, and it actually let me make a payment on the recording. I didn't have to go to a human being, and I find that really interesting. so so that changed. Hmm. He says, so this has to happen. Also, another good thing about this is that all of these incredibly ridiculous and corrupt bond deals, trade contracts are all in the Federal Reserve note. And all those contracts are going to have to be rewritten because the contracts can no longer be fulfilled because we're not using the Federal Reserve note. This is now, for those of you that are concerned about this, let's just keep the status quo. He says, like, people are worried. Let's just keep the status quo. Like, yeah, rich people, poor people, whatever, blah, blah, blah. No. He says, it's just not simply possible. And there's a reason I'm bringing this up today because we're there. He says, we are there. This is all about to go down. We don't own our own currency. He says, the United States of America doesn't own its own currency. Okay? He says, we rent the Federal Reserve note. We rent it. We pay interest on it because we are renting it. It is not ours. He says, and the problem is, and always has been, turn my volume up here. These private central banks own the money, and therefore they manipulate everything because they control the money. So whatever you have to do to prepare for this psychologically, you can. He says, now for those who are honest, law-abiding citizens, those who have their money in the banks and savings bonds or municipal bonds, those kinds of things, there will be a period of conversion. You're not going to lose anything. Those that are corrupt, they're going to lose everything. They are. I love it. I just have my little evil like laugh is going off inside my head. Oh my gosh, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. Tables are gonna turn, huh? Because they have been harming humanity in so many ways. So that's important. There has been a person, he says, who has been talking, sharing information, and he posts messages about things, and he has a mentor. And his last post was number 26, which is number 29 now. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe he's talking about SGAnon. I don't agree with everything he says either, but it's interesting what he posts. And he says, I will no longer be listening to him, okay? He didn't name his name. I'm naming his name because I know what he's talking about. He says, I myself will no longer be listening to him, just so you know. I also want you to understand something about history, particularly American history. It was Thomas Paine who originally coined the name the United States of America. He put it in one of his pamphlets, and it stuck. So he's the one who first called the colonies the United States of America. Number two, without George Washington, there would be no United States. End of story, period. Full stop. Says, when things were so rough, he used his own money, used his wife's money, sold off pieces of his property and his estates in order to feed his soldiers. Without George Washington, there is no United States. It says James Madison, who is the father and the author of the Constitution of the United States, which many countries have emulated, and is probably the finest contract between the people and the creation of their government that has ever been written. It says it needs some tweaking because it has to adjust to the times, but it is still one of the finest documents ever written. To say that they're not the heroes that history has said of them, he says this person can blow it out his ass. He doesn't know what he's talking about. So, U.S. warships are currently docking in cities. So, okay, and then he changes the subject. I'm going right into it, but he's like, he was pretty mad with this person. Oh, yeah. Alex is really big on founding fathers. Like we all should be. Um, he says, and he did a recording and he put it on the Knights of Terra. He says U.S. ships are currently docking in cities across, he says Alaska, and then he corrected himself and said Australia. They are coming ashore to assist the Australian military into crushing the deep state. And so we know this has been going on. This was a couple weeks ago. So, um, yeah, or a couple weeks ago. This was November 18th on this one. Today's the 8th of December. So he says, so Australia, help has arrived. Everything is being uh, triggered for the same time. If those of you who are wondering what's happening in Brazil and why the military hasn't moved yet, there is going to be a synchronistic movement of all the world's militaries, all the white hats, in taking down the deep state. It's all being synchronized. They are all talking to each other. I want you to know that we are hours, if not a few days away from this occurring. And when it happens, it's going to be very quick, lightning fast. And we're here today, December 8th, where Brazil apparently got their emergency broadcast. So we'll see, huh? Just breathe. Just breathe. just just breathe. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. Here. He says now, it's rumored that the Marines are in the process of arresting traitors within the military. I'm hoping this is true. He says because there are some traitors in the military. They have taken bribes, foreign money, and favors. They have built and created offshore accounts with the ridiculous amount of money that was put in there. That's all based on the Federal Reserve note, and they need to go down. They literally need to go down. I don't know if any of you know this. I know as a travel agent, when I went to the Cayman Islands for a fam trip, um, I never knew it, but when we were there, we were told like Cayman banks are where a lot of the elite families hold their money, because they don't have to pay taxes on it's like 50,000 and above. They don't pay taxes on it. So a lot of bank accounts are in the Cayman Islands. Um, Canada, he says, those of you up in Canada, the same thing applies. Your military is waiting for the go. All your military is waiting for is the go. Things have been put into place. There are American troops up there as well. And when this is all over, Canada will become a protectorate of the United States, the Republic of the United States. Australia will become a protectorate of the Republic of the United States. So this is all moving very, very quickly, and it's all going to happen quickly as well. It says now, it is necessary for those running for president allegedly in 2024 to distance themselves from the military at this particular time, so that when the movement takes place, when the go sign is given, the military is operating under military law in order to protect and defend the citizenry of each of those countries, because that is in fact their obligation to protect their borders and the people of those countries. This is going to be something that's worldwide, by the way. It says, I'm not sure how things are going to go in Britain. I'm not sure, only because I don't have any information specifically about Britain. But it's imminent, folks. It says it is. It's imminent. He says, and I run into this a lot. What are we going to do? How are we going to live? How are we going to do this? He says, well, we're going to adapt. Okay. Number one, we're going to adapt. We all have to learn to make changes, how to be flexible, how to adjust to changing times, whether it's a horrific storm, whether it's a hurricane. We all learn to adapt. We all make adjustments. We all do what we can to prepare for such things. Understand that the biggest adaptation that all of us are going to have to make is the collapse of the matrix. I'm so excited. I'm excited. I don't know about you. Hopefully, my family's excited, right? Now, he says, I hear people talk about it and they don't really understand it. It's cool to say it, but do they actually realize what they're talking about? And I don't think many of them do. So let me share with you what that actually means. It says, we have been controlled by a perspective of what life is, about who we are, about what's right and what's wrong, about heaven and about hell, about sphere Earth, about flat Earth, about dimensions. We have been fed a lot of rubbish, and because we believe it, that's what we see. When that curtain comes down, what you're going to come to know, what you're going to come to understand is that there is life all around us. That those who wish to open their third eye, those who wish to see dimensions, will absolutely see them as soon as the matrix and curtain collapses. You've always had the gift. You just don't believe it. It says you just don't believe it. Isn't that like the Wizard of Oz, where Glinda, the good witch, tells Dorothy, "You've always had it. You've always known it. You just haven't used it." Because all of us have been so conditioned to accept the physical world as the real world, when in fact it's quite the opposite. The inner world is the real world, and what you believe on the inside is what you project on the outside. This is why so many people are beginning to see starships. This is why so many people around the world are seeing extraterrestrial spaceships. This is why pilots all over the planet on the radio are talking to their other pilots, or when they return from a flight, they're discussing, writing down the things that they've seen in the sky. It's because they're trying to trigger our memories. They want us to remember who we are. Because you have to remember, this is not about the aliens. This is not about the extraterrestrials. This has always been about us. When we began to become more physical, when our frequency began to drop due to fear, stress, etc., which is all conditionally created so that we would lower our frequency and vibration to make us more solid, to keep us stuck, help was brought in the form of walk-ins, boots on the ground, and children, star beings, highly evolved teachers that were coming in as children. And many of us understand that these children haven't lived long enough to actually grow up and fulfill their own personal missions. They were taken out, they were stolen, victimized, used in ritual sacrifice, all of these type of things. And now those particular beings, some of which are angels, are stuck here. Didn't I say that some of us are angels? We're like, yeah. Because of the trauma, they're stuck here. As of yesterday, last night, it has been brought to my attention that the angelic realm, which does not live in our universe, the angelic realm exists outside our universe, has entered 12th density and has been notifying all of the dimensional realms that they are coming in. They are entering our realm, and all of the races in each of those dimensional realms are now being notified that they're coming. Now, the interesting thing about this is that they don't know hardly anything about the angelic realm because they don't live here. They don't live in our universe. They come and they go. They come in for a very specific mission and then they go. That's about all anyone knows, because many of the races didn't even know that they existed because they themselves have never experienced their frequency, their resonance, nor saw them before. And his Dark Materials season 3 just started on HBO, and that deals with all the different parallel worlds and dimensions. And Lord Asriel is now leading the war with the angels and the witches to take out the fake authority. Okay, you guys, if you haven't watched it, you need to watch this. You need to watch it. They're gathering. They're gathering, and he's going. Lord Asriel is going into other worlds, and he's getting like the best of the best leaders to help in the war. So I'm just so excited. I love this show. I love that show. It's awesome. Because it's so what's going on. Uh, he says, well, they're here. The angels, they're entering our universe in many, 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 many numbers. Now, the reason they're notifying our galaxy is because that's where they're coming in. We don't know about other galaxies. Now, when I asked Mornay, what do you know about this? He says, I don't know anything about it. Says, I mean, he told me they were coming, but he doesn't know the purpose at all. Now, I've known him 58 years in this incarnation. Not once has he said, I don't know, because he seems to always know. But now he doesn't know. Says, no one seems to know specifically why they're coming in here. But here's the thing. He says they're coming to Procyon, the solar systems around Sirius B and other solar systems. This is where they're coming. They are on their way down here. They are on their way here. It says, now, I've shared this with 3 people, 2 as a couple and 1 isn't, just a dear friend. Here's my thoughts on this. They're coming home to take home those of their own that came in and incarnated in these 3 systems to change our frequencies. And they were attacked by the Orion group. I'll just leave it at that. And as I said, these children are stuck now because all the trauma, these beings are going to be rescued and taken home. That's what I believe is going to be. It says, now, I want you to understand something. And this is something that the couple shared with me. This was their intuition, is that if they're coming in here now and they're retrieving their own, then God has already won. Then this battle is over. It doesn't mean it ends. It means there's going to be cleanup. There's going to be cleanup. But the battle between light and dark here is over. Yes. In our galaxy, it's over. God's won. Now, I know Em's shared this with me because I've had an experience, which I've shared with you, which is online, with one of these beings. The minute I get any more information, I will share it with you. But when I asked Mornay last night about what he thought about this, he said that they were excited and that they would be watching in wonder because they know nothing about these beings and they really want to see them. They want to experience their resonance, their frequency, because they're not from here. They're not from here. And of course, they would all be curious. All of the races above us would be curious because their resonance would be something off the charts. Yes. We're only 30 minutes into this. He says, shit. Okay. Yeah, that was like 30 minutes. Takes me a long time to write these out, I'll tell you. Like it's pages and pages and pages, and I'm like, oh my god, it's only been 10 minutes. So yeah, he says there is I believe he's Australian. He could be a New Zealander, I don't know, but he has a really good take on Trump's announcement on the 15th. He is FCB, Frank Charles Bravo. He is FCB, so the initials, he was trying to spell it. That's not his name, so FCB, decode. So D, the number 3, and CODE, and he's on Rumble. So look up FCB decode, D and then the number 3 and then CODE. He says, I liked him and I liked his specific take on it. He said something at the end, which was really interesting about Canada. One of the last things Trump said is that they were going to plant their flag on Mars. Now, for those of you who have been following, you know that the president, they're talking code. They're talking code. And his take on this was when Trump said the Martian flag, we're going to sink the US flag on Mars, he was referring to the northernmost territory of Canada, where he knows that they're faking the moon rover missions, which means the United States is going to plant its flag in Canada or on Canada, meaning to protect it. So you might want to look that up. I do not recall the gentleman's name. In fact, I'm not sure he even gave it. Okay? It says if you're following the crypto fiasco, then you know that even voting for a Republican that's been in office for quite some time doesn't guarantee that person will remain in office. It says I think what it came down to was that the president picked the lesser of two evils, but they both have a lot of issues. So what I'm going to suggest, ladies and gentlemen, says that come 2024 or 2025, whenever we actually have a real honest election again, that we abolish the political parties and we just have one party. We, the people party, all right? It says they run as individuals. We vote for them as an individual based on what they can what they say, what they can do, what they have done. He says, we abolish the 17th Amendment, which means that we can recall senators at will. If they don't do the job, we can recall them. But they have to run as an individual. They're not part of a party, a machine. This way, the power does truly resort back to the people, to us, the owners and the bosses of this country. This has to happen. This really has to happen because, as bad as things are right now, we're just scratching the surface. We are just scratching the surface. But the fact that it's all coming up now clearly shows the frequencies are changing, clearly shows that the dark side has lost control of the matrix and the perspective that everybody's been looking or has been stuck in. You cannot give up hope. He says you cannot abandon the movement that is occurring now. Okay? This is, our job as founders of this new republic is to lay down the keel of the ship and then build the rest of the boat around it and then sail that sucker directly into the direction of what we want. So this has to happen, and only we can do it. This isn't a time to bail ship or jump overboard. This is when we need everybody because this is crunch time. This is crunch time. The governments around the world are going to be exposed for their corruption. For those of us who are Americans, we're going to be very, very embarrassed. And we're going to be very, very pissed off. That's another storm as well. And I know I've said that before. He says, but Hunter Biden's laptop is scratching the surface as to what's been going on. We're also going to be going through a transition to change the monetary system. This may be one of the scariest elements we're all going to have to deal with, because in order to do that, they have to collapse the Federal Reserve note. Absolutely collapse it. Now, to a lot of people who are literally living week to week, like a lot of us are, that's a very, very scary proposition. I want you to know that the white hats and the military are fully aware of what that means. In fact, many of the military people have to live on a base because they don't have enough money to live off base. Boy, that brings up memories. When my husband was in the Navy, yeah, we were stationed in Mojave Desert at China Lake Base, and we lived on base. Everything he's describing, I'm like, oh, yeah, I've been there. They have to shop the commissary. I miss the commissary. That was fun. I liked shopping there. It says because they really can't afford to go to a regular grocery store where the prices are higher. It says they can only afford one car. We only had one car the whole time he was in because they can't afford two and the price of gasoline. So they get that. Yes, I do. They get that. I just want you to know, and please understand, that we're all going to go through this, and we're all literally going to be in the same place. But this does not mean we turn on each other. This means we talk, we communicate. Now, you're going to have your knuckleheads, he says, who've been completely oblivious to everything up until the moment this happens. Says the idea is to remain calm if you can. If you cannot, you should just walk away from these idiots and just not talk to them and just love them from a distance and let law enforcement or their elected representatives who aren't in jail explain to them what's going on. Because those who are white hats, they understand what's going on. It's starting to get dark out there. It's 3:15 and the dark is coming. It's been really cold here, yes. Like 20, it was 21 this morning, so I just can't stand the cold anymore. I'm getting old. A great, great change is coming, and in 5 to 10 years, where we are today, the way we are living will not at all be representative of what we see today. Everything is going to change, and it has to. We are 400 years behind our own spiritual evolution. And he laughs. He says, let me say that again. We are 400 years behind in our spiritual evolution, which is why we're all experiencing a crisis of faith. Because on one level or another, we know this. We know this is wrong. We know that we're stuck. The way we're living does not match the way we feel. Absolutely not. Things we are just beginning to remember to know about ourselves, about Source, about Creator, about everything. He says, this is such a huge test. And that's exactly what it is. It's a huge test for us. And I find it absolutely fascinating that we have all these artifacts being discovered on the earth at this time. We have giants, the remains of giants being rediscovered. And years back, Terry Wills talked about finding, he says they weren't really graves, but they were giants laid in stasis in these very large underground caverns. And somebody should find him and talk to him about that stuff. Because I remember someone showed a video or a picture, or pictures. These were giants, red hair. Their bodies didn't look like they had decayed at all. Said so. There's a lot going on, especially here in the States as well. He says we have the arcs. We have a spiritual awakening that is nothing short of profound. We have all these amazing changes that are occurring. The exposure of the dark. He says, there's obviously a plan here. There's a synchronicity of all these events. They're all connected to each other. Absolutely. And to us. It says, now the A's said years and years ago that many of us had come back in time to right a terrible wrong. We are righting the wrong. That's what's happening at this moment. And it could very well be that we have gone beyond that point of no return where this is absolutely going to be successful, and or it is already successful, which is why maybe the angelics are coming in here to retrieve their own and take them home with them. It says, now, will that apply to other star seeds? I don't know. So I just don't know. Will this set a precedent? Will the other dimensional realms follow that model and come in and take home their star seeds, their brethren, their brothers and sisters? And that kind of reminds me when he said that, like, if any of you follow Yellow Rose for Texas on YouTube, she explains that. How, she says, as we go through the East Gate to go home, there will be the different tribes, the tribe of man, the tribe of the bull, the tribe of, there's like the eagle, there's several star nations basically. And as we go through this gate to go home, we will be going back to our families, our soul families. So I find that interesting. He talks about this too. So we'll see. He says, I don't know, but they're all connected because it's all happening now. All of it. Again, those of us in the United States, he says, we have to get involved in local government. Now, there are many of you who abhor politics. This is different. When this bribed political system, corrupt political system is completely removed, we will go back to the very beginning, where it literally is about the individual. It's not about what club you belong to or what country clubs Brooks Brothers suits. It's going to be about the integrity of the individual. And someone is going to have to fill these voids. Our congressmen, our state senators, state representatives, all these who are corrupt that are going to be removed, secretaries of states, state attorneys generals, all of them, state governors that are corrupt, they're all going to be removed from the system. Ladies and gentlemen, these are our homes. We have to step up. We have to engage. We have to initiate the conservation, or sorry, we have to initiate the conversation about what it is that we want. Remember a while back, it was a couple of years back, where supposedly a bunch of the state governors were gathered. Trump called them in several years ago and talked to them, and nobody knows exactly what they got talked to about. So I wonder if that's part of it. It's because these are our homes. This is where we live. These states, these countries, these provinces, they're going to clean house. And there's going to be that void of power. And the military doesn't know how to do that. They're not a civilian organization. They're a military organization. And we're not creating a military republic of the United States. That's not what we're doing. So I would love for all of you, this includes myself, to think about in what ways we can contribute once this happens, because we may be talking about this come summer this year or 2023, basically. He says many of us may be called to step up in our towns, in our counties, in our states, our provinces, just step up to take a leadership role. Because when you break it all down, it's really all about common sense. It really is. This is the founding fathers of any nation, of any country. They put it all on the line. They do. They risk everything. And then when they find nationhood, then what happens is you establish local governments. Those local governments, which create and inspire the nation, are run by very regular citizens, everyday people who know everybody in town and who care about everybody. They want to make sure everybody's safe. And when he said that, it just reminded me of the movie The Patriot with Mel Gibson. That's a fabulous movie. If you haven't watched that, you need to watch it. The Patriot. Like, and that's how it was. They all gathered, they all got excited to be able to go into town, and then they would hold the local town councils, and everybody had a say in it. Okay. And it's great. And that's the way it has to go back to. Um, okay. Okay. He says that the homeless have every opportunity to figure, okay, wait. Everyday people who know everybody in town and who care about everybody. They want to make sure everybody's safe and that the homeless have every opportunity to figure it out. That their kids go to safe schools, schools that actually teach them something worthwhile. It is no different here in Colorado than it would be in South Africa or any place else. It says, we essentially all want the exact same thing: to live in peace, live in a clean environment, be able to eat, make sure our kids are safe, and we don't want to be fucked with. That's the new mantra. Absolutely. It says, and ladies and gentlemen um, that are listening to this, whether you're here in America or in any other country, you are all going to be called or moved to participate, to engage, to inspire, maybe someone you know, to get involved, to hold office, because this is about humanity. All these changes are about humanity. We are here to save humanity, okay? And we have to be willing to risk it all, because remember, this is all about future generations. This is the foundation we lay. After the old system has been brought down completely, the foundation we lay sets up the success for all future generations behind us. That makes us founding fathers and founding mothers. In in the history of all civilizations, those people are not overlooked. They're always remembered because of what they gave, the way they gave it, the way they inspire, the example they gave and are to future generations. For many, it's not about being remembered, but it should be about doing the right thing, always trying to do the right thing to make humanity better. What kind of people would we be if we did not try to make our civilizations, our homes, our cities, our countries a better place to live? What kind of people would we be if we didn't want to do this? But that is who we are. That is, in fact, who we are, because many of us who maybe don't remember just yet, but many of us who are dimension travelers, we've been doing this work since time began. We can't give up now. We just can't. This is so important. Now is the time. This is going to turn on a dime. On a dime. And at most, we have 3 months before the currency system is changed, and then everybody will be forced to make a change because we all know just this one system, this slave system we've been living under. That's all we know. Okay? Says, but we can't do status quo anymore. It's just not possible because the entire energy surrounding that status quo is so dark that it's cursed. Literally, it's cursed. Okay. I'm sorry that it's shorter than an hour. He says, that's all I have for that. I know this is my last for the month, although James and I are talking about doing a Q&A for next Friday. Hopefully he'll let me know before we end the show today. I would like to do a Q&A, which they did, because there are going to be some of the same things happening this week and early next week. So JP, let's do the questions. Okay. So first question, Alex, you mentioned in a previous webinar that benevolence talks to us when we're dreaming. Can you speak to us about this a bit more? Who are those who teach us and why are they teaching us? I've had such dreams a few times, but do not remember what they were or the topics or who was teaching us. That's exactly like my dreams. Like I'm on a spaceship somewhere and I'm in a classroom and I'm being taught something and I don't remember when I wake up. I remember I was there, or I remember I'm in a classroom in a school. But each one of my dreams has had an advancement. Like it started out over the years, like I was in elementary school, and then it gradually got to like junior high, and then high school, and then it was like college, and then it was like a reunion. And there's been several like reunion dreams. So it's weird that it's been like an advance of that schooling for me. I don't know if any of you have had those dreams too. Alex says, thank you. That's a great question. I myself have had those off and on. He says, it always seems it's a classroom setting or some type of auditorium, and there's always a lot of people. Many people we recognize in the dream, but then we can't remember when we wake up from the dream. They're always in color, which means you are there, in fact, traveling. And essentially, what we're being taught are usually survival tactics, ways to handle specific situations that appear to be predetermined events that are going to occur that affect everybody in that room or auditorium. The people teaching it sometimes look like us and sometimes they don't, but we always on some level recognize them and we know it in the dream. They typically are fourth, fifth density beings. In the dream state, they're more than likely fourth, but there have been fifth, and you will know fifth because they will have a shimmy, a glow off their physical body when they speak because they're from another dimension. So they're wearing a biosuit. And when we see them, you will see the shimmy a little bit as they move, and that's their biosuit because the resonance between fourth and fifth is very different, especially if they're on the higher scale of five. And our physical bodies, because of all the transitions we're going through, our physical bodies can already step into lower fourth. It says we pretty much are already there. Many of us are already there. We just don't realize it. There are times where there will be something individual. You will find yourself amongst a group of people, and then all of a sudden you will find yourself isolated with someone who appears to be a more knowledgeable or an officer or a teacher type of mentor frequency energy, that you will find yourself all of a sudden pulled to the side and they're telling you something individually that is very, very specific to you. Because I have many conversations who have had those experiences, and at least 70% of them come back to me and say, you know who that person was? That was me in the future. I absolutely know for a fact now that that was me in the future. So I know a person that had a contact, and as the person walked away, this starship officer, she turned around and she looked back at this individual, and it was her. It was her face now, as she was getting on her starship to leave. Okay, so the woman was her in the future. She just came back to remind her of who she was. This has always been about us, and we cannot lose sight of that. This is about humanity. We are on a mission here to take this race, of which we find ourselves a physical part of, genetically invested in, into another level of frequency, another domain of frequency. That's the mission. Okay, next question. In my healing work, I continue to find reptilian beings messing with my clients and my spooky too. They seem to be able to travel interdimensionally. The Arcturians help us deal with them. It appears that expelling the Draco bunch by military action may not be all that is needed. Any comment? And Alex's answer was, yeah, what you're dealing with are lower fourth density entities. And I've talked about that over the years that we would be running into them. Now, those that are third density are gone. However, as we are rising in frequency, we will move into lower fourth density where you still have a contrast of light and dark. I have talked about this for years, especially the earlier webinars going back to 2016, 2015, he said 2017. We're going to be getting some help there because we need it and we just don't know this element. It says, we have not been taught about multidimensional, interdimensional warfare. We simply don't, and we haven't been taught how to recognize very specific types of frequencies when it comes to attachments and things of that nature. I don't have an answer for you at the moment other than ask the Arcturians how, when these are removed, what is it that your client can do to remain untouched from that point on? What is it that he can surround himself with? Does he need tachyon energy? He says a tachyon necklace. Does he need to sage? What are the tools that he can do himself once you've had the session and you've cleared him of these entities? It says, what is it that he can do to remain clean and clear? But when I talked about this, I was told that we were going to get some help, that there was going to be portals created where we would be able to just walk through them into the fourth, and they would keep all these attachments away from us. It doesn't sound like that has been happening yet based on some of your question. All I can do is find out for you. And when he said the portals opening up, that reminded me of when I went to the Ascetti Ranch for the George Cavassalis conference weekend, and George talked about there will just be these portals that will open up and we'll just be able to walk through them. So I find that interesting that Alex talks about these portals just showing up. I will get an answer for you, he says, because that's a big deal, especially now with all the changes going on. There's going to be a lot more people in fear, and the last thing we want is for these things to be feeding off of anybody. We want them to starve to death. We want them to starve to death because they are who they are. Next question. Lots of focus has been placed on Enki's return, taking karmic responsibility for the Anunnaki's treatment of humanity. However, what about other ET groups that have harmed and manipulated the human race, like the Nebus and the Dracos? Will the Loki group be held responsible for their participation for trying to prevent humanity's awakening? Where do other nefarious groups stand today in terms of karmic reparations? And Alex says, it's my understanding that's exactly what will happen. Now, what that looks like at the moment, I couldn't tell you because I don't know. As far as the Draco, he laughs. He says, I don't know about reparations from them. I would just like to see them gone for good. That would work for me. He says, the less I'm around them, the better, frankly. As far as the Anunnaki, isn't it interesting that the family, at least one member or two members of the family, are stepping up and saying, look, we apologize, we fucked up. That's huge, in my opinion. That's huge. That shows a lot of character. That shows a lot of spiritual evolution. Now, the worst thing we could always do is be histrionic. And what I mean by that is that when you're stuck in the past, you only see the present and the future in the past. That's all you see, and you never change your perspective because you're always stuck in the past. It says now, they haven't been here 36,000, 34,000 years, whatever it is. That's a lot of time. Look at how we've changed in 4,000 years. So I think we have to be open. I mean, it's not like they're going to come in and say, okay, we're moving into your house. It says that's not their approach at all. It says, plus we have bodyguards. We have bodyguards. But as far as the other groups, I don't know. I simply don't know how those are going to be handled. It says, that's the question. That's a question I can run up the flagpole to other contactees who talk on a regular basis and with other groups who deal with those groups. A lot of fourth density places deal with those groups. The Nebu and others, everybody in one form or another has dealt with the Dracos or have been touched by what they've done. Well, let's see how much the Anunnaki step up. The proof is in the pudding. But they're here, they're not running away, and they're not blaming anybody else for the actions of their own. So they're not blaming the kids, which is a good sign to start with. Usually the perpetrators blame the victim, right? Well, that's not what they're doing. So this shows promise of advanced maturity, and we'll have to deal with it accordingly. As I'm like blue in color, I so need a new computer so I can have a clearer picture. Next question. Hello, sweet Alex. What the hell is up with the celebrity Black Eye Club? It's clearly a part of Peterwood, but people and celebs are still getting it. This week, Hunter Biden, which we know he's a clone, the real one's gone or in protection somewhere. Ghislaine, while she was still in prison, and even, which this one surprises me, I didn't see that picture, a month ago, Dr. Simone Gold, of all people. I know we're moving on from this whole cabal shit show, but I'm curious, is it a sign of implants or initiation? Thank you for everything. And Alex's answer was, it's a living organism that is put in their body through the eye. Maybe someone can post this on Telegram or wherever it is that you get your information. There are videos showing these things going into the eye. It's extremely disturbing. But essentially, these people are owned, and that's the purpose for doing this. He kind of just chuckles and he says, that's just another dark thing we're all going to have to find out about. But these organisms are living and they literally take over. There is a video about this that is available. Maybe somebody can help her out with that. That's what they call the vril, I believe. And they kind of look like little, what do I want to say? I kind of want to say it's like a stingray in a way, like an aquatic kind of animal because it's got this long tail. Yeah, it's really interesting. Like why the hell would you do that just to have money and fame? And I don't know. I don't get it. I would never, ever, ever put something in my body, especially if I know it's to own me, control me. I don't think so. I guess that's why I'm here, right? Like, how many races are currently living in the inner earth, and what happens to them when humanity ascends into the fourth and fifth density? And JP, his host, says, well, you said it was the planet that was ascending, didn't you? And Alex says, yes, I did. I did. I'm aware of 4 races. I want to share something with you. I worked on the Iridium satellite project. I was working for Motorola, the Global Satellite Systems Group, as an engineer. And in working with the Iridium system, it was more advanced than people realize. They played it down in the media. It was just telecommunications, private corporation. Well, there's just a whole lot more to it, he says. But what was really, really interesting is that as we were putting satellites in orbit and they rotate around the planet and they're in low or Earth orbit, roughly 485 miles above the surface, some at 486, etc. He says, when we would put up new satellites, and they would make their way up to the North Pole. He says we would watch the ships come up out of the inner earth and scan the satellites. And they would go down, go back inside the earth. And they would do this with every new satellite. They had a way of marking and mapping which ones they had already scanned. And it was always just the new ones. And they somehow always knew. So they monitor us as well. We don't necessarily monitor them. They certainly monitor us. They understand what's going on. And I also want you to understand they are totally on board now with helping humanity, rescuing humanity. They are working from inside the inner earth, pushing the remnants um, that we're chasing back to the surface to make it easier for us to catch them. They're not giving them quarter to any of these ET off-worlders that have been doing any of this stuff to kids or human beings. No one's getting any quarter, especially the human, and especially the human element. They are forcing them to the surface so that we can take care of it. This has been going on roughly 2 years, and I think I've mentioned this in previous webinars as well, is that everybody's on the same page now. We have to clear this darkness, this horrible resonance. This is like a ditch. It really is. It's despicable. No one wants to be around it because it's death. So everybody's on the same page. Everybody's working together. At some point, we will be told about them inside the earth. They will come up and introduce themselves. They will be more than likely show us a holographic crystal disc, and they'll put it in a machine and play it. And it will be their meeting with Admiral Byrd. So we will know that who we're dealing with, these are the same beings he met when he went in there. Don't be surprised by that, okay? It says, we win. It says, in the end, everything's really okay. In fact, everything is incredible. But from where we are today to getting to incredible involves a lot of growth, a lot of growth, a lot of personal decisions, a lot of voluntary introspection, because we're all going to have to learn and live and think in a different way. We're all going to become very different people. Doesn't mean the core of you or your soul is going to change, but how you interact with yourself, how you interact with nature, how you interact with each other, there are going to be significant changes. There are. Truly looking at everyone and having mutual respect for who they are, regardless of anything. That's a leap. That is going to be a huge leap for a lot of people, because I don't think we realize how much we judge other people day to day, today, today. He says, because we don't even think about it. He says it's become so repetitive that we don't even think about it. So those are the things we're going to have to do. We're going to have a need perspective, and we're going to have to grow into it. Next question. In the A's culture, what do the females typically engage in? Many of the beings in contact with you and Elena, for the most part, are male. I'm curious what the females' jobs are in their culture and how a more evolved culture view their contributions. Which he didn't really answer the second part of that. Like, he didn't say what kind of jobs they like hold. So, but he says, okay, that's a good point. But there's a reason for that. Now, before they engage in contact, these races study behavior very, very carefully. Now, there are some contactees who are literally talking to women, and then there are others who would be talking to males. It all depends on the figures they've had in their life, where they have learned the most or have shown a great desire to be mentored by. He says, now, I've had Morine and Visayas, but my dad and my grandfather were very, very integral in raising me. I lost my mom very early at 8, so she wasn't around. I had stepmothers, but that didn't always go well, especially when they had their own children. That's a whole nother issue. And there are others whose fathers are gone or died in a war, and the mother figure was the predominant one, and therefore it was a female that approached them and began to have contact with someone here. I would have been okay either way, I think, but they chose a male for me, and I have absolutely no regrets about that. I've seen the Andromedan women. Says Mornay has at least one that's a crew member, and she's very deliberate. She's very firm. She's very strong. She's very much a leader in her own right. She should have her own starship, and by now, maybe she does. Says I think it's just who would have had the most impact. I think if we were on fourth or fifth or sixth density, I don't think it would matter at all what the gender would be. But here on third, especially stuck in the matrix like this, the last thing they want is for you to not take something like this seriously because they're risking their lives coming down here to talk with us. They also realize that they are putting you in danger or in a compromised position as well, especially when it comes to paranoid governments, paranoid religions, things of that nature. So it goes both ways. So would the contactee respond more to a masculine energy or to a feminine energy? I think that's what it really comes down to which would have the greatest impact. That's what I think. It says I can't replace you can't replace a mother. It says my mom was awesome. She was absolutely awesome. So that may be on an emotional level, maybe gotten in the way if it had been a woman for him, I guess. He says, plus my behavior on the Andromedan ship where I saw this woman and I wasn't thinking naughty. He says, that didn't help me at all. Wisdom comes from experience, and experience comes from poor judgment. And he laughs and he says, it's as true today as when Chief Joseph of the Nez Perce said it. Says, next question, please help. Says I backed myself into a corner. Yeah, Chief Joseph. Nez Perce, that's where we're in Nez Perce County. So, yeah, I'm around the Nez Perce Indian. They're actually called Nemapu. I thought that was a funny name. Nemapu. But their symbol is the butterfly. And I thought that was so cool. Um, Next question. Do you have intel on the ownership and purpose of the ancient Black Knight satellite? Um, I guess monitoring Terra by its polar orbit around Earth. Apparently, it's been visible for a very, very long time. Alex says, yeah, there's quite quite a bit of information regarding that on the web. Dr. Sala has a great deal of information that about that as well. My understanding is that it communicates directly with a star system, a solar system in the constellation of Butes, says which is in Orion. I've heard it's said it belongs to the Anunnaki. I have no reason to doubt that, but it does communicate with the star system in Butes. This we know. He says, so we can't get close enough to say who it's owned by or get a license plate off of it because it has a self-defense mechanism. But honestly, it has been seen throughout our solar system. It moves around, it gets around. Next question. In The Law of One by Carla Ruckert, she distinguished between density and dimension. Density was a frequency connected to dominant chakra expression, and dimension was more of a holographic construct. How would you and the A's describe each concept and distinguish between them? He says, well, that's a very interesting question. First, let me say that Miss Rucker left us way too early. According to the A's, their perception of density is a band of frequencies, which we would call a physical dimension. Their interpretation of those words, it means the same thing, dimension or density. That's just how they've always explained it to me. They never said, well, density is a chakra for frequency, ever. Never have they said that. That may be how Miss Rucker interpreted it, or I don't know, God rest her soul. But as far as the A's are concerned, which is why I talk the way I talk, is that when I refer to a density, I'm talking about a band of frequencies. For third density is 72. For fourth density, it's 141 or 143. It says 5 is 223, and then it goes up exponentially from there. Those are bands of frequencies of density or physicality. So I think we're just mixing words, but we're all mostly just talking about the same thing. Next question. After disclosure and destruction of the elite, how do we deal with people like us who are still operating in the old way, like cheating, stealing, being lazy, killing? What are your thoughts on this? That's been one of my questions for a long time. Like, how do you have this lower? Because they're a lower vibrational frequency, and like we have those of us who are awake and we're higher frequency. Like, how do you live together? That's a big question. I still don't really have that answer. He says, well, that's the $64,000 question, isn't it? And he laughs. He says, well, there's a great deal of hope that those people wake up, that they realize that the decisions they made were all based on the scenario of survival and that they no longer live in a world where they have to survive. So they have an opportunity to make a change. If they do not make a change and they continue in their ways, they will have to be removed from society and get help. So it's go to jail, whatever it's going to look like. And we won't know that for a while. We just won't know that for a while. Some of the ET races, when they have very, very problem citizens of their own, they will take them and put them on an island with people just like them that are very, very troubled. And they will make sure that they stay on that island and they figure it out. They work it out. But they're separated from humanity. And living with their own kind is a very, very good mirror for some of these people. Because when it all starts to come back on them, then they begin to have their epiphanies. When it happens to them, when they become the victim, how many make it? What's their survival rate? I don't know. But I like that idea. He says, I do. I sort of like that idea. The old saying, you get what you give. That would be a very good scenario for them to learn that lesson. Next question. Do you have a regular meditation practice? And how important do the A's consider meditation for our spiritual development and connection to Source? And Alex says, the A's are always in meditation. Says, even when they're not, they are. For me, myself, I just like to be in nature and I like to be quiet. I love silence and I often get that walking the dog, walking in the woods. We've got some beautiful trails here where I live that I can take him on. It says, in the silence, I find grounding, I find comfort, because when I can hear my own frequency, it reminds me of who I am, which is an intergalactic spiritual being, and then I'm good. He says, it's like me hitting my reset button. He says, guys, I'll see you next week. Friday, same bat time, same bat channel. Thanks and have a good weekend. All right. So that was it. Hopefully you enjoyed that. If you like this, subscribe. Sorry it's gotten dark out there. It's about 4 o'clock. It's 3:57 and it's almost dark here. I hate the end of fall, beginning of winter. I don't like the darkness. I don't. It's cool when it snows though, because as I'm driving home at night, especially, it's like there's a light on and like the hills glow and you don't even need your headlights. It's just the coolest thing, it just glows and you can see everything. So that's kind of peaceful for me. Um,
Anyway, hopefully you like this. Hit the like button, subscribe, send this to your friends, share it, and support Alex. You can go to his alexcollier.org or brighteon.com. He has Alex Collier Official too, and they do the webinars. Pretty much, he's done it every Friday the last couple of months. So that's why I'm having a hard time getting caught up. So anyway, I love all of you guys. Hopefully, I think we all kind of feel this intenseness in us. Um, Something big is about to, there's a bubble that's about to burst like any day. We all feel it. We're just hoping it's the good thing coming. So, anyway, continue to be that lighthouse and shine your light to all those lost ships at sea in the darkness so they can find their way home. So say we all, and I will hopefully see you next week and we'll do the next webinar. Thank you so much. I love all of you. See ya next time. Bye.